911, do you need police, fire, or medical?
911 emergency.
911, what's your emergency?
No one's injured? Okay, are you able to exchange information?
I have a few family members that are in law enforcement, so I obviously was always pretty interested in it growing up. They suggested that I looked into a cadet program. I applied, and at 16 I started, and that was a really good way to kind of get exposure and a better understanding of all different job titles here and what everyone does here. From there, I then became a PSO, which is a police service officer, at 22, and then I became a dispatcher at 24, so 3 years ago. So I've been dispatching for 3 years.
I first started in emergency services for about 3 years. I worked on a 911 ambulance, and I got injured and started looking for a job that would be more sustainable. I was at a sheriff's office for 2 years, and I decided that I wanted to do something part-time so I could start a family. And I found Walnut Creek, and Walnut Creek was one of the few places that actually has part-time dispatchers, and I found that really appealing.
Prior to Walnut Creek, I spent about 4 years at the Sacramento Police Department. That's where I got my initial training to be a dispatcher. For the last year, I've been at Walnut Creek. I lateraled here. I'm originally from the Bay Area, so I wanted to move home, and when I was searching for a department, I thought Walnut Creek would be a great fit.
When I get here, I always check in to see who's been on phones and who's been on radio. We swap every 2 hours between however many people are in the room.
At Walnut Creek, we're dual trained, so I'll answer 911 calls and non-emergency calls while my partner works the radio, dispatching the calls and communicating with officers. But when it does get busy, it's kind of all hands on deck, and we're all kind of helping each other answer the 911 calls and listen to the radio traffic.
You have to be able to multitask. We sometimes have to talk on the phone and also dispatch over the radio. Oftentimes the officers, when they're out with someone, they're busy, so they cannot go to their computers and check themselves. So it's our job to get them that information that they are asking about. We call for tows, we call for PG&E, we'll call an ambulance.
The basics that we're going to be giving out for a dispatch of a 911 call includes the 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, why. You know, where it's happening, who's involved, why they believe it's occurring, of course if any weapons are involved.
I always encourage everybody to be aware of where they are. Look at street signs, look at businesses, because sometimes when you're calling 911 and there's an active emergency, everything just leaves your brain.
I think oftentimes people think that we have some magic thing that tells us exactly where they are, and we don't. Location is always first, and then description. So if we are reporting something with a car and a person, we're going to ask about the vehicle first, because that's the bigger object. Being a PSO, I was able to drive around the city, typically downtown, so knowing where the stores are, knowing what little alleyways people are talking about, knowing certain fountains, things like that really help, because oftentimes when people are in distress, they aren't able to look at an address or a street, but they're able to give you landmarks.
Dispatch has a very important role of being the first responder. You never know what you're gonna get when you answer 911.
Having empathy can really go a long way, even if it's just, I'm sorry you're dealing with this situation, and then asking more questions.
I think when I first started, obviously getting those really intense calls are really scary because you're not as confident in your skills, and then as you get more experience and you become more confident, then those calls are kind of exciting and they're not so terrifying, and you're able to control the situation. It was really hard for me at first to interrupt people and take control of the call because I never want to be rude. You do have to just kind of stop them and say, I'm going to get you help. I just need to ask some questions.
One of my favorite parts about working specifically for Walnut Creek is the robust downtown life. It's kind of a melting pot for different cultures. There's different cultural centers. People come from all over to come to the mall, to come to the parks. There's amazing food all around.
I've really enjoyed being able to get to know my officers more on a personal level. I just get to see them more, whereas my previous agency I didn't get to interact with the folks that I'm dispatching. But at Walnut Creek, I have more of an opportunity to build that personal relationship where I can really get to know the folks who I'm sending out to these calls.